Hey everyone, guess what? It's time. It's noon on Thursday, and so it's time to join the Courier people to say hi. We're doing something a little different this week. I hope you'll stay with us while we talk a little bit. We had a Twitter space about this, and it really took off. We started some threads on the old Hacker News and on Reddit talking about this. So, we're gonna try and talk about this. We're talking about mental health in tech. So I've got some guests. They're going to share everything they've done and the lowest mental health moments of their life, the closest that they've come to self harm. No, they're not going to do that. We're just going to say hi. We're just going to talk about our experiences. Sorry for joking around, everyone. This is going to be a good one. Let's start going, as they say, anti-clockwise with Shreya. Shreya, say hi to the people.
Hello, people. My name is Shreya. I'm a developer advocate at Courier, and yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Hey, Tejas, he's here saying hi. Thank you. Hello. If you know me, you know Shreya. That's great. But keeping going anti-clockwise with the theme. Nat, say hi to the people. Tell them what you do for Courier.
Hi, I'm Nat. I'm a software engineer at Courier.
And next, we've got the Dynamo, who comes up with all of the ideas for all of the things and also builds software at the same time. It is V. V, say hi to the people.
Hello, I love the intro. That was quite the
Mm-hmm,
intro.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm V. I'm a software engineer career as well, and I'm just super excited to get into it today.
V never makes any mistakes, and they never have. And so um, this reminds me of a story about my children that I'll tell at another time. So we're talking today about mental health and tech, and I really wanted to kind of stay pretty tight to this theme about like essential like I don't know quite how to put this because so a couple of caveats to begin with. First of all, talking to your doctor or talking to your therapist is a way better way to get help than listening to a live stream. So if you're like, hey, I'm not sure how to treat myself, it is worth it talking to mental health professionals. And then also we are all like well employed people in the tech industry, and I totally get that not everyone is going to have the privilege or the treatment options that we're talking about here. So I don't mean to be sanguine about that at all. um the people with the most severe mental illness in America are the most likely to be the victims of violent crime and not the perpetrators thereof. People who deal with bipolar and schizophrenia are extremely likely to be the victims of violent crime. It's messed up. That's not, so I don't want to soft pedal those aspects. I do want to talk about how people feel like they can get some help and what some of the options are. So I think I got this comment on Hacker News where it's like, okay, well, why are we talking about this especially with the tech industry? I don't think that there's anything special about the tech industry in as far as how it messes with your head. I don't think driving a truck for 16 hours is like better for the brain, right? But I also know that with its remote work and with its really good care options, a lot of people are able to thrive in this industry who really wouldn't be able to in other aspects. I wonder, V, could you talk about that a little bit? Have you seen some of that? Have you experienced some of that?
Yeah, I think that like just thinking about like my peers in general, like a lot of my friends are in different industries, but to me sometimes it feels like we're particularly fortunate sometimes when we're in tech because we have the ability to like work remote and like that gives you a luxury. Like if you're having an off day, you don't have to worry about going into the office and being on. Where it's like if you were maybe in a field like finance, and I'm not trying to call out any fields, but like I worked with finance and I worked with like, like CFOs and things of that sort. And like being in the office and having to like be on and like make sure I got into work before the CFO and like I left after the CFO, like those kinds of pressures and things like that. Where it's like I don't feel that same amount of pressure while I'm in tech because I can just say, you know what, I'm gonna work remote today. And if that means I want to work in my PJs, then I work in my PJs.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think that Americans really can be guilty for working super long hours and having that be like a value. I think, Nat, have you ever worked in a place where it's like, the putting in the 50, 60 hour weeks was a huge part of the identity?
Yes, yes. I worked at a company where that was a big part of it. And as we worked remote and we had different time zones, it kind of felt like they expected us to be available all the time. But working remote really helped in the sense that if I was having an off day, at least I didn't have to go into the office and kind of mask everything, You can't be like, you're supposed to go in and they ask you how you're doing, and you're like, doing great. You can't be like, oh, I'm kind of having a panic attack right now. So it's nice
Actually,
to.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was
No,
gonna say
V, go
that
ahead.
that triggered something in me. Like, actually, when I was working at Launch Darkly, this was like the first time where like I got to the point where I would ask someone how they're doing, and they would give me genuine responses. They'd be like, you know what, I'm having a really bad day, and I felt like for me, I started to normalize talking about, like, it
Hmm.
just stop the small talk and like just have like a real conversation sometimes. Like, you know what, how are you doing? And like if I ask someone that, I never ask them that, and I just say, oh, I'm good. Like, I ask them that because I want their honest response. And for me, I think that that's one way you can start normalizing talking about mental health. Like, if someone asks you how you're doing, maybe just like try saying, you know what, I'm not feeling okay today. And I mean, of course, like, you have to make sure you're in a safe space and you
Yeah.
have a certain rapport with that person and things of that sort. But like, just starting to not just say like I'm okay all the time as like a robotic response is like something I've sort of trained myself to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nat.
Oh, and I know that we've gotten there as well, which is very nice. I'll be like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And he'll be like, "Doing okay." And I'll be like, "Ah, I'm a little, under the weather." And it's very nice. It's very refreshing, and it definitely takes off that like performance that you feel like you have to have at work.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in fact, I think I saw this is from a couple years ago, somebody talking to their manager about they were going through a depressive episode and they weren't able to work, and they really got kind of iced out at their job, and eventually they got pipped and fired. Eventually, performance put on a performance improvement plan and removed. And it was in the tech sector. I don't want to give this business for it was a long time ago. Those people don't work there anymore, but it stood out because it was exceptional for the tech sector to be like, hey, I'm depressed for 2 and 3 weeks and I'm going to get electroconvulsive therapy and I can't work and I need you to work around that. And we were all pretty surprised that the, fairly large tech company hadn't done that and hadn't accommodated that person.
Hmm.
And I think part of that is it's just a real simple economics thing. It expresses it is hard to hire these people. A lot of us who work in engineering roles, we're not readily replaceable. So it's pretty easy to create the expectation of like, yeah, like I can actually talk to you about what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Because when I was doing tech support, no matter how good I ever got at doing that tech support, I was very aware that from the management side, it would take 6 weeks to get a replacement for me, and that was it. That was how long it would take to train a replacement. And they had that number, locked in. They'd seen how long I'd taken to train people and stuff. So that's just not the way, right, in the engineering side, where it might well be, okay, it'll take us 6 months to spin someone up. And then after the 6 months, we'll be like, this person is not as good as who we had, So just the very status is very different. So, I think all of us have our own stories, the three of us, about sort of realizing, hey, something is not quite right. And I'll tell mine, which is I was like getting ready to exit tech support. I was working at a higher and higher level and I was being given more project-based work. And it just did not go good. Like I would have a deadline, I would blow it, I would get to work. I was like assigned to be working on this stuff, and I was just like, oh, I'm like reading other stuff, doing other stuff, and not able to focus and get the stuff done. And I finally went to my doc and I said, I know I'm, a fully grown person, but I need to talk about like stuff, treatment that I got when I was a kid for attention deficit disorder. And that absolutely changed like the path of my career. Like I was going to spend my life making like 45 grand a year, and like that was going to be the deal. Like I would eventually be made manager of something or other, and that was it, right? Whereas yeah, that's that's not what happened. And so yeah, can you talk a little bit, let's go clockwise maybe. You know what, I'm gonna stop thinking about clockwise and anti-clockwise. I have real bad dyslexia, so I keep thinking about the clock from the bottom and stuff and thinking about a transparent clock. I'm gonna stop saying that. Let's go to V next. V, talk about sort of this moment of saying, hey, this other stuff I'm trying to do to solve this is not making sense.
Yeah, so actually for me, I always thought that something was like maybe that I processed information differently and maybe I was just a little different, but I had a hard time voicing that because I always had really good grades growing up. So, they never thought like, oh yeah, she could have a learning disability or she could have like anything like with mental illness or anything like that. They just sort of brushed that aside. And then when I got to college, it got to the point where like I was completing like half of my exams and I was doing really well on them, but that means that I only still got like a 50% because I only completed half of it. And I just realized I didn't have enough time to get things done. So I got tested and they said that I had really bad ADHD, that also had that brought on bouts of dyslexia because of my impulsiveness and how impatient I can get when I'm reading. And having a diagnosis really changed things for me. And then I also got diagnosed with bipolar 2 rapid cycling. And that really helped me understand my depressive and my manic episodes where like there would be times where like I would grind out all of my homework for 2 weeks straight and I'd be done and bored. And then I would also like be that person that was like up until like right before, like a minute before class, trying to finish a problem set because I procrastinated so much and I was just too down to get anything done. Like getting medicine for these diagnoses was really helpful for me. So I started taking Ritalin regularly, and then I recently found like a good bipolar medicine that actually works. The tricky part with treating some of these things at the same time is that the medicines can conflict. And like when I
Mhm.
first got diagnosed, they asked me, well, what do you want to treat? Do you want to treat your ADHD or do you want to treat your bipolar? Because at
Yeah.
the time, all the medicine for bipolar would also interact with the ADHD meds, and the bipolar meds also made you gain a lot of weight. And I was already feeling really low about my weight, so I didn't want to do that. So
Yeah.
while I was in college, I neglected to treat my bipolar and said, you know what? I'll find other mechanisms. I thought that I could, but I'll just focus on ADHD for now. And
Yeah.
that was like okay for college. But then when I started working, I was like, oh man, I had a spotlight under me where people would analyze my moods at work and they'd be like, oh, V's in a bad mood today. Oh, V's happy today. Oh, V's this today. And I'm like, whoa, I can't
Ouch.
take this. Like
Yeah,
I am under a magnifying glass.
so
Uh,
I have, when I was younger, I sort of felt like I'm grabbing the big head mode. I don't know if I should. I'm gonna leave big head mode. I don't want to be in the giant head. I don't want to be the giant head. But when I was younger, I used to feel really conflicted about this stuff because I was like, well, you should be doing what's the most healthy, right? And I really had the sense of like, well, you should be treating it because it's not healthy to not treat it, or if it has these side effects, you shouldn't do it because that's not healthy. And there's a funny, kind of obvious moment for me where I kind of detach from that, which is being trans, where if you sit and you only do what is totally safe, then a lot of us aren't going to get to where we want with our bodies and our presentation, right? And at some point, you have to say, when you're trans, you're taking hormone replacements and stuff, to say, this might not be the perfect thing for my health, but I'll be miserable if I don't do this. Right. And you come to this, I think, if you just think about it all, you come to this rather extremist view at the end of it, which is like, it is my right to both treat this stuff that's going on with me, or to not treat it, like, as I see fit. Like, and I had a really good friend who was dealing with eating stuff. And I said, look, you have been told that it's like really bad to not be working with this, but I really want to tell you, like, you have the right to eat or not eat. Right. And like, yeah, it's rough and it's rough on you. You're really not eating right now, but like, this shame is not helping you. Shame is not driving, positive change. Um,
exactly.
yeah, I mean, that I know you've worked a little bit with treatment. Have you similarly felt like there's kind of a before time, like before you had much effective treatment and afterwards? That was a question for you, Nat.
Oh, for me, yes.
Yes.
So I was actually diagnosed in high school, early high school. And it was the same thing as V, right? I was doing very well in school, but I was miserable to the point that I started skipping every Friday of high school. And my grades were still up, right? But they were like, hey, you can't keep doing this. I still have the record for most skips. Um, but they so then I went to my doctor and I was like, hey, I'm kind of miserable all the time. Even when I'm happy, it's not quite like all the way happy. And they diagnosed me with depression. And I started on meds fairly quickly, but then they made me go very manic. And so the diagnosis changed, but I had an insurance at the time that didn't want to diagnose me with bipolar until I was after 18.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of made things even harder because then I'd be very impulsive sometimes. And then when I got to college, I was able to get diagnosed correctly and get the correct meds. I really resonate with the shame part that you said, right? Because my family was, well, the country I come from is more or less Catholic, and kind of taking medication for things like that is seen as shameful, right?
Hmm.
Like I've had a family member,
Yes,
depression is for rich people. Poor people don't have time to be depressed. And it's like, okay. So for a while during college, I had these bouts, which is terrible. Don't do this. Uh, where I'd be like, I'm making all this thing up. I can get off these meds and I'll just be normal.
No.
And it would work for a bit, right? Because it would work for a bit. And then it would just get so overwhelming. And then I'd start taking them again. And then I'd start shaming myself for taking them. Where like at the end of the day, especially with bipolar disorder, but even with like more non-clinical depression, these things are there to help you. It doesn't make
exactly.
any less. It doesn't mean that you're wrong or that there's something wrong with you. They're there to help you. And bipolar disorder is a chemical imbalance. There's
Literally, yes, yes, Nat. Like this really resonates with me because like for the longest time, I thought that asking for accommodations, I was using a crutch. I was asking for special treatment. And I
Hmm.
want to really, really reiterate what someone said to me one day. You are not asking for special treatment. You're asking for an even playing field. You're
Hmm.
asking for a fair chance, the same chance that your peers have. And if you don't, get these special accommodations, like my unlimited time for my exams or time and a half, or like my medicine, then like I cannot perform in the same way. Like I'm doing myself a disadvantage and it's a disservice to myself in general. So like I for the longest time I felt a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, and just like it just really resonates with me because I come from like a very like Hispanic background, and like mental health is not a thing a lot of the times, like
yeah,
culturally. Like they're
Yeah.
like, oh, we just don't believe in that.
yeah,
Yeah, it is quite wild to, as I have like spent time living in Mexico and like making friends with people from Hispanic cultures, like you had these conversations where it's like, oh yeah, we just don't do that. It's like, okay, but your like dad is bipolar though, right? Like I love you to death, but like, and it is like, yeah, you can write it out, right? You can white knuckle it if you want to, right? But like you don't not believing the thing is there and having like a strong culture of like not triggering is often not usually it doesn't seem like, oh yeah, these people are doing great now.
yeah.
Now with
You
that, of
know,
course, I'll note that there is one huge reason, especially in minority cultures inside the US, there's a big avoidance of care, right? Because a lot of people have had negative experiences with care, right? We see this right now, right, in fertility treatment, that we see like the criminalization of certain fertility issues, right? Means that, you know, of course, there's horrible harm happening today, right? With a cop showing up at a hospital, like, "Oh, what happened with you? We're gonna criminalize what you did," but that will echo for decades afterwards, right? Is like, "Oh, you should go to the doctor for that because this is not." I went to the doctor one time because this was happening to my body, and cop ended up showing up. I ended up getting arrested, right? Or this happened to someone I know, or that kind of thing. So well, especially when this sticks in my mind when we're talking about people, not taking the vaccine, and it's like, oh, hey, some of these groups, like for example, Black American groups, don't trust, the medical community. It's like, well, with good reason, dear. This is not some sort of boogeyman, right? Like the Tuskegee Airmen experiment happened, right?
Yeah,
It's
those
not.
syphilis trials are real, and
Yeah,
that
and
was like
continued
30
through
years ago.
1978,
Yeah, that
right?
was
Like,
literally
like
30 years
yeah,
ago.
come on,
Like,
don't kid yourself, right? So, I don't want to downplay that, but I definitely see that we've all had experiences where denialism really has not helped. And I think part of that is, and it's the simplest idea, is this idea that probably shame is not going to drive like huge improvements in your life.
yeah,
So, there was this I think it was Camille Fournier who did a talk and said, hey, there are all these ways that you should be improving. You hear them all the time, improvements to your routine, to your workload and stuff. And maybe you do need to improve in certain ways. Maybe you do need to do this better. Maybe this medication isn't what makes sense for you, but I want you to allow that it's possible that you may be doing enough, right? This isn't just
mhm.
blanket positivity, right? Because if you're, working 4 hours a day and then going and screaming at your kids all night, right? Like, yeah, maybe we could sort of turn the wheel a little bit here. But it's also like some of us exist in this state, especially a lot of women exist in this state where there's always something really negative about the path that we're doing, right? We're always like, I should be exercising another 4 hours today, or my joke was always when I was dealing with eating stuff is like, oh, I should lose. I'm looking forward to the moment when I lose 187 pounds, right? It's like, wait, right? Like, I don't think that's going to happen next week. I think I need to like work on loving myself as I am.
Yes.
That gives me this other one that Aaron Aldrich brought up, and he's going to talk about this as DevOps Day Seattle. So I'll share a link down below. Do check out DevOps Day Seattle in about 2 months, because he's going to talk about this at that one, and I really think it's a great topic. I'm sorry, I believe Aaron is them. Sorry, Aaron. So they brought up this idea of about, and it seemed like it was a meme. It seemed like some other people on the Twitter space had heard it, which was like, you get up and you feel really low today. You do not feel up to doing anything today. You cannot, this day is like a 2 out of 10 day, and you can't make it to a 10 out of 10 day, And I wonder, Nat, have you had any experience of like, just like trying to learn the ability to say like, hey, a lot of the stuff I'm supposed to do is not going to happen today?
Yes, but it's very difficult for me to accept that. And there's many times. So that's the kind of messed up part about, I know that V touched about it, about uh, bipolar disorder, right? Because sometimes you'll have manic episodes and I'll complete like all my work for one time and even part of the next time. And it's like amazing. And then you come down from that and it's not the same. And it's very hard for me to not shame myself for that, for being like, great, now this time, I only got halfway done, even though the other one was much bigger than usual, and kind of like always measuring myself at the highest level rather than a variable, or like, today I had a bad day and that's okay. And, I can either catch up. That's something else that I'm always like, oh, maybe I can catch up over the weekend. Right.
Yeah.
And we have a really nice boss. And once I was working on a Saturday at night and he just slacked me, go to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, things like that. It's definitely hard for me. And I have a friend who gave me a really nice nerd analogy. They were like, the Enterprise can go up to warp 9, even more. But if it was at warp 9 all the time, it would break down. That's why, Picard goes, warp 5 or 6 all the time. And so you don't have to go warp 9 all the time. And sometimes you can go warp 2 and cruise and it's all good. You're still going to get there. And it was like a big relief. And I'm still working on it for sure.
Yeah.
But it was a very, it's okay. Not everything can be warp 9 all the time.
Yeah. I really hear that. Now, something I'm curious about, it really reminds me of this, because I deal with this with ADHD a lot, is I'll have what they call like hypomanic episodes, right? So it's not like I'm like crazy impulsive or making really bad decisions, but it is like, I'm a lot more up, I get a lot more done, I start more things. And one of the things about shame is I realized that I need to stop feeling shame for like how I acted in those periods too. Like, capitalism often drives a lot of us to be like, oh, I'm not productive, so I feel bad about that, right? But then also when you're diagnosed, when you're trying to treat something, you're like, oh boy, I was really like way off the handle. I was, really over the top here. And you can start feeling shame about that too. And
yes.
V, I wonder about this one. Have you ever has it taken a little bit of time to learn to like sort of love that part of you as well? To be like, oh wow, like I acted way, I flew off the handle here, but like that's a part of me that's also lovable,
Yeah, I did it like a week ago. I got 4 piercings. I was feeling super manic. I just like needed to go get some piercings. I almost got a tattoo. I wanted to go spend a bunch of money. Like I just was having a moment, and I got my nose pierced on both sides. I got my second holes in my ears, and I don't regret it. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I was like having a little bit of a moment in an episode, and I ended up not getting a tattoo, but I'm sure I would have loved the tattoo. And now I'm just like, I just embrace that. Like, I just think about it as like for me, I come with a little bit of pizzazz. It's like my little extra. It's like a little cherry on top. It's just a little sparkle. It's my little sparkle. And like, maybe I'll come to work with another piercing, and that's fine. I was having a moment and I'll love it. It's okay. Like, I've just learned to like accept that, but it's taken it's taken 29 years. So
Yeah, I have started to, like, in my little life, I have started to look at, there's like right now, I don't know if I'm sorry if I told this on the Twitter space, so if you're listening to this again and I'm repeating, I apologize. But I I was I have all these like cables, the micro USB and USB-C and USB A to B, you get it, cables, and I have them in bins in my cabinet, but the bins are too small. And I need to switch them to bigger bins, but all the bins are labeled. So I need to switch to the bigger bins, change the sorting, and relabel them. And I'm just like, this, the normal me will never do this. This will absolutely never happen. When I'm in that state, either because I'm medicated or whatever else, that's when I will do this, because it's just not like, and I shouldn't pressure myself to do it. I think that's the one. Nat, maybe you could talk about this a little bit. That there's like this thing where you're in a 2 day where you're not going to get that much done, and you keep thinking like, oh, I'm going to work on the weekend, or oh, I'm just like, you're lying flipping through Twitter at 2 p.m. and you're like, okay, just a minute, I'm going to get up and get to my desk and really, get to it today. Have you kind of had that feeling?
Yes, yes. And I'm definitely, again, I'm still working on the shame part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll be like, obviously on days like that, it's my body telling me that I need to rest, that I need some rest. But then I'll, make myself feel bad, and then I don't even get rest. So I get nothing done, and I get no rest, and all it does is make me feel worse, and it makes the entire kind of period feel worse. My partner's very good at helping me with that. I'll be like, why am I like this? And she's like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to shame yourself. It's not helping anything. Like, let it go. And it's very nice. It's very good. I have good support. I'll be like, why isn't my code working? And I'll be like, oh, it's because I'm stupid. And she'll be like, no. So 10 out of 10.
Yeah. And I think one of the ones you really key into there is this thing of like, you needed rest today, but instead you like sat at your computer. It's like you didn't get work done, nor did you go lie down and watch a movie. Instead, you just like sat there like in this weird state of tension. Yeah.
Yeah. It like made everything worse, because then the next day I don't feel any better either. And it's an even bigger push to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the hardest part too, right? There's always those people that when you're having a bad day or when you're feeling down and you say, oh, I'm not, oh, well, go for a walk, try some exercise, take a shower. And like, yes. And I know that those are all things that will make me feel a little better. It's not going to solve everything, but it might make me feel a little better. But I wish that I could drive the point that, like, when I feel very low, I know the things I need to do. Like, I logically know what I need to do, but it's very hard. Like, this thing drives me down from doing things that I even like, not even things that will make me feel better, but things I even like.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny, those sort of tautological advice things where it's like, are you feeling bad because you're not doing enough work? Just do some work. You'll feel a lot better when you do. No, thanks.
It's literally like the same concept of like, oh, I feel really, and I'm sorry if this triggers anyone, but like, oh, I feel really upset about my weight right now. Maybe you should go to the gym and work it off. Or maybe if I could get myself to go to the gym, like getting myself to even have the energy and the motivation to go like do something like that takes a lot. Like that, like you need some other push. And when you're feeling low, you don't have that.
Yeah, and not to be like AA about it, but it is a real feeling that you get this in AA where it's like, hey, feeling like I have a lot of shame about my choices is not actually going to motivate you to improve.
Yeah.
So sitting there and saying, again, when you're dealing with addiction, to say, oh, I'm so gross and I'm disgusting, I'm the worst person, it'll just make you feel miserable about yourself. And then that'll drive bad decisions. In fact, you hear people locked in really bad patterns being very ready to be like, oh, I'm the worst. Don't worry, I'm the worst person and I'm not worth saving. And don't worry, I'm a husk and I'm evil. So therefore, like, bad decisions that hurt yourself are fine, So, I think a lot of us, we need sort of the higher level, like that's the tactic to improve the situation, but we need like the strategy being, hey, clearly I am seeing that I need rest right now. I'm flipping through TikTok for the second hour of the day. Hey, I'm showing that I need some rest right now. So what's some rest I can take that's really good, that's really nice for me, And I got to a thing like a year and a half ago. I told you about this one time. It was like, I realized that that year I'd made like 300 grand and I had never ordered like Uber Eats or any other delivery food for myself. And I was like, hey, this is crazy. this is not good, right? And it was like a lot of my stuff in my life was going really good, but my ability to like love myself and take care of myself was pretty low. Um, yeah. So, I wonder, like, Nat, when you're feeling rough on yourself, what is a way that you can kind of take care of yourself a little bit, or kind of show yourself that you're, a person who's worth loving?
For sure, naps really help me. I always call it a soft reboot. Hold
Mm-hmm.
down the button, go to sleep, wake up better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Naps definitely help. And then music, I found a lot of support is the wrong way, but a lot of outlet, in music.
Yeah, I agree with that. I started doing this random thing in college with my best friend, and it's called like 10-minute dance parties. And we would
Mm-hmm.
just like random, even if you're feeling like shit, like we would be like literally sobbing our eyes out, like just like having the hardest time through our degree sometimes. And we'd be in the lab, and she'd be like, 10-minute dance party. And just turn on something, just start dancing, let it out. And like we would just be goofing around. And that really helped. So there are times where like I turn on music and I'm like, you know what? Today's a day where I'm just going to be silly and goofy, and I'm just going to dance my way around the house for
That's
10
really
minutes.
good.
And then that
Right.
usually like brings up my mood a little bit, and that'll give me the peace that I need to say, you know what? I'm going to take a nap now, or I'm going to go play DDR, or I'm just going to tell my team that like, I'm going to go run an errand, and my errand could be I'm playing DDR for an hour because I need it. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah, for me at the start of the recent unpleasantness, I completely lost my mind. I was working from home, and I was actually like, I changed jobs right at the start. And so I was stuck at home without work for like a week and a half or 2 weeks even. And then even with work, I was losing it. I realized I couldn't watch a TV show because I was like my brain was just on fire. And
Yeah.
I actually read, of all things, I was reading the journals of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, and he was talking about how he was in prison multiple times. And he said, if you don't exercise while you're in this cell, you will lose your mind. He's like, you can do this for years if you're exercising every single day. Because he, like a lot of these people, was being put in solitary. And so he would like, he describes in great detail, because he's Lenin, always writes these very long letters about like, he did this jumping jack, he did this, and I started doing that. I started doing, and I have never been good with exercise when it's like, oh, I'm working on some big project and I'm going to change my body or something. But when I could just see the benefits from today, like how much better I felt today, I'm like, oh, this is good. This is worth doing.
Yeah. Has anyone tried jumping rope?
I think my only concern is I live in a 3-story house, and I weigh 400 pounds. So while I can jump rope, I think that the rest of the family would think that they were getting raptured. Well, that happened. They would just hear like, like the paintings be falling off the walls and stuff. But yeah, it can help. I'm a big fan of, I do like whatever exercise. I have these arm weights that I use. They're like, they strap onto your wrists, and I know they fit me. I knew they would fit me when I ordered them because they were labeled ankle weights. And so it's like, cool, that'll fit my wrist. Very good. Very, very good. And that helps me a lot. So I wanted to talk about something else that we covered in the Twitter space. This is, I don't know, we gotta grind the gearbox a little bit because I don't know, transition to this one. But talking a little bit about what we found as treatment options, and we ended up talking a little bit about BetterHelp and the other kind of online therapy options. I know that a couple people have mentioned that they were really, really helped by that. And I think V, you've had some experience with this. I don't know, Nat, have you tried this out as well?
I didn't try BetterHelp. I tried I don't remember what it's called, but it's the one that they offer through Blue Cross, but those aren't really therapists. I think they're just counselors.
Mhm.
And that did help a lot. But I was also very lucky to be able to contact a therapist through insurance as well. So I had those two resources, but I haven't tried BetterHelp yet.
Yeah, I think in the Bay Area, it is really possible to, find a great therapist. I realized I'd fired my therapist years ago because she was moving out of town. And then I was like, oh, wait, I could just go back to the therapist I really liked because now we all use online therapy. So I do like online sessions. Via, you tried one of them as well. You tried one of these
Mhm.
online systems. Yeah.
Yeah, I like for me, I spent a really long time looking for a therapist. And for me, it was super important to have a Black therapist
Mm-hmm.
or a Latina therapist, someone that would understand my struggles because I feel like I deal with like severe imposter syndrome and and I've dealt with like a lot of discrimination at work and things of that sort. And like those are things that like really bother me that I have to like work through. So I wanted a therapist that would really understand that. And like looking through for a therapist with insurance that was like, oh yeah, I'm a Black therapist and I'm a part of the LGBTQ plus community. And, you know, also I specialize with learning disabilities and I specialize in this. And I was like nearly impossible to find. Like I could not
you're down to
find.
one guy in the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's taking new patients? That's the big one. Taking new patients. Yeah.
So I just couldn't find anyone. I went on a search for like 6 months for like a Black therapist or like a Latina therapist that would, you know, hit this criteria. Couldn't find them. That was in network. And then when I found one, and I think like a session was like $200 or something like that. And I was like, we're like 180, I think. And I was like, there's no way, because I need like at least a session a week, a minimum. So I started doing BetterHelp, and BetterHelp has been super helpful. I have a Black therapist. She's wonderful. And I mean, for me, that's helpful. Like we've finally gotten to the point where like I'm in my therapy sessions and it's like, well, what do you want to talk about today? And I'm like, nothing really. Like I finally gotten to a point where it's like there's nothing like gnawing away at me, and that's taken quite a bit of time.
Yeah. I mean, I finding like a matched person. I'm sorry, Nat, you probably had something to say.
Yeah, and definitely like the culture part is really interesting and important as well. I was also looking for a Latina therapist, because a therapist that I had previously, I was discussing these issues that I had with a family member that were really kind of gnawing at me, and it was really it was detrimental to me. But they were like, "Well, cut them out, and it's like, I don't know how to tell you that I can't do that.
Yeah, we're not doing that. No.
Like I can't. I just can't.
Yeah.
That person is very dear to me. We've been through a lot of things, and I feel like there's a better way of resolving this that wouldn't mean that I'm never going to talk to them again or never going to see them again. And then my new therapist was like, well, let's work on setting boundaries and how we can do this in a way. They were like, you know, is there a space where you can love them and still not be affected by this? And so we worked on setting boundaries and things like that, and things were resolved. And I was like, I can't cut them out.
Yeah.
And
yeah, and that's a big cultural divide. That's a big cultural divide. You'll have white American therapists who absolutely say, you know, just set hard boundaries, you know, just stop talking to this person for a year or two. And it's like, it's just not, it's not part of my culture. It's not going to work, you know? And they don't have any understanding of the immigrant experience. Someone's trying to deal with really big cultural changes and try and understand how to treat people right. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, you know, we have this story. I'm not even going to put it up on the screen, but, you know, definitely there are always concerns with any kind of treatment option, but especially with these like online treatment apps about how well do they, you know, ensure our privacy? Are they selling data? Are they marketing data? And of course you have people even who have had, you know, really poor treatment experiences. But the fact is, like, I think a lot of us are going to end up accepting treatment in a way of a type that is somehow equivocal. You know, for a long time, I had a trans therapist who was not the best therapist I've ever had, but that's what I had to have. I came out, you know, it was like that year, and I couldn't deal with talking to somebody else, you know. I had to talk about, I mean, just I had my stuff. I had time, and it was really central. Now I don't. I have a cis therapist who seems very cool, right, about that stuff, but it's not the primary thing I want to talk about, and I have to accept that it's a little bit of an equivocal solution, you know. So I don't want to downplay this, you know, like if you're really concerned about getting data mined or getting targeted ads, or obviously there's big concern right now about online privacy with reproductive health, right? But you know, also like if you could find some help from it, don't let that stuff stop you from getting the help that you absolutely need, right? Like you cannot take a perfect option. On that sunny note, I mean, I guess, you know what, let's do one thing before we for you know, to go around before we start closing things up. I would say, you know, for me, the help that I got really changed my life for the better. Right? Like there's 100 things I could point to that I say like this is a lot better than it was before. Let's go around a little bit. V, what are some ways that you feel like your life has like improved with doing some of these like treatment options?
Oh, I think I've gotten like really good at not letting my shit mood affect other people. Like, I
Mhm.
used to be that person, and I hate to say this, but, like, if I was in a bad mood, I guarantee that everyone else around me within, like, 5 minutes was also gonna be in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Because I was just, like, so negative and so toxic at one point that and I didn't even know I was doing it. It wasn't intentional, but I was just, like, in such a I don't
You know
know, I
what's
was
funny?
ugh.
You have come into some event we were doing or like talking about an event and you were not having the best day, but you were so good at communicating that and being like, "Yeah, I'm feeling down today." And it was like,
Mhm,
"Okay, cool. We're going to move on." It was like that wasn't the person that I talked to like 3 days before. Like, not nothing like you're like, "Hey, I'm excited. Let's do this. It's going to be great." Then you're like, "Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, let's go. Let's go." Right? But you were able to communicate in a way that I was like, "Oh, yeah, this is fine." Like we're going to do great. And that person is a person that we love to see. Yeah. So, that was yeah, you really good at that. I even in the brief time I've known you, I've really noticed that. It's fantastic.
thank you. It took a really long time to get used to that, and so it's like a muscle that I have to train every single
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And I also got really, um I got really good at apologizing. For me, it was, like, painful to say that, like, I was sorry. Like, I would be like, "Well, I'm sorry that you felt that way." Like, no.
Yeah.
That's kinda shitty. That's like a way of me saying, "Sorry that I'm not sorry."
Yeah.
So, like, I got really good at being like, "Oh, I'm sorry that, like, my mood impacted you and that affected you in such a negative way." And I've just gotten more cognizant and, like, saying sorry even when sometimes I don't wanna say sorry, and sometimes I don't even feel like I'm wrong,
Well,
but
and in
I'll
fa-
say sorry for someone else's mental health and their state, you know?
well, and in fact, right, this is the other side of that where like, as women, you can get to a state where it's like, no, I'm apologizing for stuff I don't need to apologize for. Where you're like, the first part is also a skill, right? To be able to say, no, this is not me. You didn't see
Exactly.
my email, that's not my fault, right?
Mhm.
Like, whatever it is. But Nat, what's a way that you can really point to, like, here's how your life has been benefited by getting help?
Yeah, for sure. I think with treatment, I've gotten much better at like being aware of triggers and the best way to handle
Mm-hmm.
what I want, what I need in a more healthy way. And although I still need a lot of practice with it, self-love has really helped me a lot. Like I used to be somebody who would not have compassion for myself, and I claim that being kind is one of the most important things to me, but I wasn't being kind to myself. And learning
Yes.
to do that has helped a lot
Mhm.
in the real world.
Yeah, that's a real one. It's definitely one I've experienced is like being able to point to all these ways that I like take care of myself better now than I like ever did before. Like I remember when conference season was really tough for me because I had trouble like even feeding myself and like caring for myself well. And so I would end up like I'd like been through the wars going to a conference. And it's like conferences take a lot out of you, but they are, 10 hours out of the day and then you're done, right? And you should go for a nice meal after that, right? So,
Mhm.
you know, with time, I mean, for myself, I'll take my turn, which is I really feel like I there's really not one aspect of my life that hasn't improved since starting to work with like a trauma counselor. I put a number on earlier in the show. I was just doing the math. Like I should look for the year where it's like, hey, I now make 10 times what I did when I was really struggling with mental health, because that is a year that is coming around. That it's like, hey, I literally with content sales and with contracts and with my salary and with investments, I'm 10 times richer than I was when I started. So that's great. But also, frankly, all of the personal relationships that I have now, all of the friends and all of the, my partner and all that stuff just would not be there if I hadn't gotten this help. And so, when I enjoy a nice meal with them, when I go out with friends to the beach, I'm like, oh, I would not be having this if I had not worked on this stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so hey, that there, positive note to close the stream,
Yeah, I
folks.
wanted to see if there was
Oh
anything that Shreya wanted to add.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this is like really helpful for me because I am very early. This is very early in my journey with mental health. And I'm kind of in a place where I feel like I'm okay where I'm at, but there's a lot of people around me, friends and family, that are dealing with issues that I can clearly tell they need to go to therapists. They need to see like actual professionals about this. But again, like the whole cultural thing adds to it, right? Like they're convinced that they don't need to because that's what they've always believed. So I'm like constantly trying to push everyone to like go to therapy. And for some people it's worked, for some people it's completely backfired just because maybe they went to the wrong type of person or they just didn't, it didn't end up working out well. So it's like really helpful for me to sit here and kind of listen to everyone else's experiences and notice that like it's not just like a one track path of go to therapy and it'll work out, but there's a lot of other things. There's a whole community aspect behind it, right? There's a whole aspect of like my mental health being good is also going to be a large impact in the people around me having a good mental health. So yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah, it can help with the right person to even talk about it, like going to the gym or getting a meditation instructor or something, to say, hey, I see that you're not where you want to be,
Yeah.
For me, that was like the way I was interacting and the way I was available to my kids when I wasn't working was not what I wanted it to be. And now that I've done all this work, I don't know, I don't play with my kids that much. I'm around. Like they can come and sit in my room with me while I play Elden Ring, like that. But I don't feel bad about it anymore. I feel like really good about how we interact and stuff. So that part feels good. I love that. Other stuff that we want to cover? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I also think it's important to mention too that like you don't necessarily have to be struggling with your mental health to go to therapy. Sometimes it's good to like go somewhere, have a small rant, a small thing, or even just to celebrate something. It's nice to just let it out and tell somebody who's more or less, well, not really a stranger. At some point you
They're
develop.
impartial. They're impartial, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
No,
nice.
I love that. I love that. And what I also that reminded me of good old ADHD kicking in. What was I gonna say?
Oh no, and your
Oh
homework's due in
no, I
2 hours
forgot.
too.
Yeah, there we go. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me, and then I will mention it. But yeah, you
Well, I
don't
think
have to go
that.
to therapy.
Oh, go ahead.
Even if you're feeling like okay. What I wanted to say is that like this it makes me feel like I for the longest time I used to feel like, oh well, I know people that are going through things that are like far worse than what I'm going through. That
Mm-hmm.
does not minimize your problems, and there's no such thing as someone going through something worse. In my opinion, I don't think that what people go through is like necessarily worse. I think that like depending on like your upbringing, your experiences, people are prepared for different things. So say someone is super sheltered and they haven't had to deal with like anything, like no hardships in their life, and then something happens to them, that could be catastrophic to them
Yeah.
because they just haven't had to go through like anything else. So that doesn't mean that minimizes what they're going through. Like I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
trying to say that it's
the
like
gym
don't minimize your
analogy.
problems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the gym analogy can be helpful here for two ways, right? One is it's okay to go looking for an improvement, right?
Hmm.
Most of us, when when you're lifting a barbell, are not like, oh, I suck so much, I gotta fix my lifting strength, right? Like you're not like, oh God, we can just say, hey, I want to get better at this.
Hmm.
And then, of course, few of us, hopefully, go to the gym, see somebody, really struggling to lift the 10-pound weight, and go like, oh, that guy needs some more help than me, I should leave. Right? Like that actually feels crazy when you put it that way, right? You're like, oh, right. It doesn't matter that somebody else needs this more or is seeing better benefit, right? I guess, I'm usually with the gym, we usually put it the other way as like, oh, look at that lady, she can lift the entire weight machine off the ground and therefore I shouldn't lift a weight. It's like, but if you're able to do it at all, you're usually able to say like, oh, I guess we're all kind of all on our own journey with that one. And it really doesn't matter what somebody else is doing is inspiring. That's great, but it really doesn't affect like what I'm going to do for myself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Also, recognizing that somebody could have it worse, like objectively worse, but recognizing that and is not going to make your situation better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or
You know,
making your situation any less, like, yeah,
or any
maybe
less.
it's worse, but it doesn't minimize your problems by any means.
Mhm.
And like back to what Shreya was saying, that like, you feel like, you're in a really good, spot mentally, but you have people around you that may be struggling. I think that it's really important for you to like maybe like reflect and think about how what they're going through can influence how you're feeling. Like, I don't know if you're like a total empath. Like when I have people around me that are going through a lot, like I start to shoulder their burden too, because I'm like, I can't help it. Like I just take on their problems because like I feel like that they're my family and that's my job, you know? So like I just encourage you to be a little cognizant of that, because like, you know, maybe everything feels really good, but I don't know if you're also like shouldering or feeling, you know, their problems too. So
Yeah,
I
no,
don't know.
totally. That exactly. Like, I didn't even realize it was happening, but I have a friend who like really desperately needed therapy. And once they started, I was like, okay, maybe I'll check it out too and see if it helps, right? And my goal going into it was like, how can I help this person better? And after the first session coming out of it, I was like, wait, maybe I need therapy too. Like, maybe there's ways in which these things are impacting me that I didn't even realize, right?
Yeah. I what I'm doing now is I feel like I'm sort of done with the big stuff I want to talk about in therapy. Is I still go in. I actually go in every week still, even though like I don't know, probably could go every other week. But I go in. I just talk about like how am I actually feeling about the stuff that happened. You know, and very often it's not something major. It's not like, oh my god, I'm going nuts. It's just like, hey, you know, let's talk about how I really feel about this. Let's talk about what feelings this brings up, and that can really help. The nicest thing is it's been about a year since I went in and talked about work. That's always good. It's always a good point to be at, where it's
That's
like
awesome.
work's okay, you know. Like that's not big on my mind, you know. Like that's always when you're doing pretty good. For those watching along from home, I got a little piece of Jolly Rancher gummy on my microphone, and so I'm trying to slowly remove it during a live stream instead of just waiting until afterwards. But I will say, Jolly Rancher gummy sours, trying them out. They're not great.
They're good to me.
They're kind of not. Yeah,
Not great.
I like the little Among Us. I like the little Among Us shapes that they make. The little Among Us guys shapes, which I think is unintentional. I think they're supposed to be fruit, but it really, I mean, like I don't know if it's that. It's like a cat skull. I think. You know,
I think I need to try them again, Nica, because I thought that they were okay, but I was also very, very munchy at the time.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll go to the grocery outlet and I just try some. It's a big thing because I was dealing with like really severe eating disorder stuff as the pandemic started. It's like I think being home and being by my fridge all the time caused me to like tune into this in a way that I like literally had never done before in my life. I realized that I was a little too into events with free food because I would go on these trips where I had an expense account and I would struggle to feed myself. Be like, hey, I'm just gonna go get some food because I can, because literally everyone wants me to do that right now. Like I should do it. But I was still just like eating appetizers for all day. It's like instead of taking care of myself. And now I go to the grocery outlet and I will regularly assign myself like I'm gonna get one treat out of every aisle of this store. Or like I'll be like, I gotta pick 3 things from this candy aisle. No matter how questionable. You can find some great stuff. You also find some stuff that's pretty rough. Sometimes you have bad experiences and you have to be able to accept that. But yeah. Okay. This was really good though. Other final thoughts, other stuff that we want to, Nat, do you have a SoundCloud album coming out soon? Do you have a recipe for lasagna that you want to share? Is there other places on the internet that you would like to be found?
I put my Twitter, finally. I forgot to do that.
Yay, you did. You got here.
Yes. I don't have an album coming out, but there is a recipe that I love, which is I brought it for the potluck. It's the chocolate chip cheesecake bars.
Oh yeah, those are
Good treat.
Yeah, those are
Good treat.
good.
really good. By the way, if anybody watching this is an office manager or people ops person, have a potluck. They're really
Yeah,
good.
it was so much fun.
It was so good. Yeah, it was like 10 out of 10 workplace experiences.
I can't believe I missed that. I need some of those.
Yeah. You also missed elk. I don't know. Maybe it's just a city person thing, but I'm always so excited to eat like game that like someone hunted. I'm always like, oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Become animal, become bear while eating elk.
Especially after Buck Hunter and like losing all of them. I was like, oh, I'd never eat this in real life if I hunted.
Yeah, that's right. We played Buck Hunter and we're like, oh, I see. You could. What's it easy? It's not easy like you would think it is. And V, what is something that you would like people to check out on the internet today?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe start to familiar yourself with like DDR. I like DDR, so I'm shameless plug for the game. Go to Dave and Buster's, maybe try and play it. Go to round one. It's really fun. Stomp some arrows. I highly recommend. 10 out of 10.
If you're in the Portland area, I recommend going to the Wonderland arcade. It is a nickel arcade using the like swipe cards now. It's like the Dave and Buster style cards, but it's a lot cheaper. Their DDR machine is always like questionably well repaired, but still fun. Sometimes the left, you know, you go in and you're like, oh, I see, I can't go left on this one. They used to have the taiko drumming game. It's pretty amazing, but not
Oh,
currently
yeah.
working. And Shreya, we probably have some like work plugs that you're gonna remember, and I'm certainly not. Oh, we're at GlueCon. We're at GlueCon next week. If you're at GlueCon, if you're watching this, most of you watch this after the fact, so you probably GlueCon already happened. But anyway, sorry, we're at GlueCon next week. But other stuff, Shreya, that we should plug.
Oh, wow. We have an amazing automations launch coming up. I'm really excited for that. That's going to be fun. If you want to learn more, we have some awesome blogs. And I just want to point out Nat's background right now is like one of the illustration from our blogs. And it's just top tier, beautiful content there. So you can check that stuff out on courier.com/blog. And yeah, we're here, I think on a bi-weekly basis, like once every other week, just talking about tech things. So if you have suggestions for what you want us to talk about or conversations you want to be a part of, we'll leave them in the comments and we'll get to those as soon as we can.
Love it. And yeah, we're supposed to be here every week, but it usually works out to about once every 2 weeks. But yeah, Thursdays at noon, we'll be back. We'll have some guests, I think, soon. And this was such a good one, folks. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you so much to all the people who watch like on demand later. Like that is really cool. Drop us a comment if you have stuff you want to see next, just like Shrey mentioned, because you know, we're super receptive to that. We didn't really talk about Courier at all. Go follow Try Courier on the Twitter. Go to courier.com and learn how we can automate notifications for you, which will be its own kind of mental health care. If you know that your notifications are getting through and that they are appropriate to the people you're sending them to. Have a good one, everybody, and goodbye.